Greetings, and konnichiwa, and welcome to the Onyx Tavern. This is your host, the Barkeep, bringing you podcast 47 here at the Tavern, presented by Hirotaku.com. And tonight, Raptor, you're here, aren't you?
Yeah, wasn't there last night, but I'm back.
Oh, yes. Raptor is back for a new podcast tonight for something that's kind of an interesting topic in the realm of superheroes in general.
Yes.
And here's the thing. When people think superheroes, they are usually defined by their powers and their alter egos, or their secret identities. Now, Raptor, a lot of superheroes need secret identities. Batman needs a secret identity.
Superman needs one. Spider-Man needs one, yes.
Yeah, but there are heroes that don't. The X-Men, Iron Man, any DC heroes come to mind. Dr. Fate doesn't really need a secret identity.
Yeah, and Green Lantern John Stewart from Justice League, and I know he's also from comics, but that's the one he's most known for. Mm-hmm. Don't take my head off, people. He, at least in the cartoon specifically, avoids keeping a secret identity.
Absolutely. Now, the main reason behind secret identities is that you protect yourself against people who want to come after you, and you protect those close to you that want to come after them. Of course,
it also creates drama by giving something that the reader can identify with by having them have this human life.
Much like how the Hulk, Hulk works in that, because you got the average Bruce Banner, and then everybody wants to be the Hulk, or that's how they perceive themselves when they get angry.
Yeah, wanting to Hulk out. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But, Raptor, what we're going to go ahead and talk about tonight is the practicality of secret identities in specific Power Ranger seasons. Because, Raptor, the way I look at it, and we'll get into this, but some Power Ranger seasons, I don't know why they have secret identities, and, how it fits in. So let's go ahead and talk about them season by season. We're going to go from Mighty Morphin all the way up to Megaforce and just analyze each season individually. Sound good?
Sounds great.
Well, the first season, Mighty Morphin. And we know Zordon said he has his 3 Ranger rules. No particular order, never escalate a battle.
We'll talk about that sometime.
Yeah, never escalate a battle unless Rita challenges you. What was
Never use your powers for personal gain. And lastly, the subject we're going on, do not reveal your secret identity.
Yes. Now, the citizens of Angel Grove do not know who the Power Rangers are.
Yeah, and it's a big plot line in Season 2 for Bulk and Skull to discover who the Power Rangers are.
Exactly. So I can understand keeping the identity away from the public sometimes because of extra notoriety. You don't want people hounding you. And of course, if something goes bad, it's not, Power Rangers, why didn't you help us? It's, Jason, why didn't you help us?
And also, but here, we're running into our first snag with the secret identity concept.
Yeah.
What is one of the big reasons that is commonly given for comic book superheroes to have secret identities?
So that the villain can never go for the family or for the girlfriend.
Yes, which is shown to be completely irrelevant in the case of the Power Rangers' enemies, Rita and Zed.
Because they know who they are.
They specifically target them every episode.
Upon reviving the Green Ranger, now under her control, she says, go after Trini, the Yellow Ranger, and Billy, the Blue Ranger.
Yeah, and she's always looking at them to get ideas for her monster.
Exactly, like in, I forget the one about the Spitflower, where Kimberly makes the float. And she's like, oh, I'm going to wreck that float and all that. The problem with it is that Rita has this information, but doesn't really know what to do with it.
And forgive me if I have this on the wrong season, but the episode with the Rangers' parents, was that season 1?
Yes, the return of an old friend, where they had the Parents' Day and she kidnaps their parents.
Yeah, it's the only time that something like that happens, where she really uses that information.
Yeah, but Raptor, I ask you, if the villain already knows who you are, then what's the point of keeping secret identity from the public, at least in the context of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers?
I think it is pointless, and I really only think it was there because of Saban wanted to pitch this as a superhero show.
Mm-hmm.
So they went along with the established superhero trope of secret identities.
Yes, and they kept that for a great long time. I mean, pretty much everything from Mighty Morphin to Zeo to Turbo. But
and
before we
sort of in space,
and we'll get to that. But let's start. Let's go to the next season or the next series, Mighty Morphin Alien Rangers, because this was the first time in which secret identities did not matter. Now, for lack of a lot of explanation here, the Alien Rangers pretty much traveled to an alternate 1995, in which they basically reveal that they are aliens. And of course, if this is alternate, Reed and Zed probably never attacked him. And there's a whole big mess in there, which I'd covered in one of my previous videos. But for the matter is, they're aliens. Therefore, their identities being known really doesn't matter at all.
Without a disguise, since they don't aim for a disguise, it's not like people are going to... It's not like you're going to have much of a secret identity to hide.
Absolutely.
Having those bulbous purple heads.
Exactly. And actually, the odd thing is, we had brought this up in our pre-discussion, is that the Alien Rangers do go out in public a number of times, but they're never accosted by anybody say, "Oh, you're the Alien Rangers." It's just basically like aliens are walking amongst us, and that's everyday life. Now, again, 2025 when SP... Is it 2020 or 2025 when SP...
2025.
25. In SPD, yeah, I can understand that. But in 1995, 30 years before the fact, that is kind of odd. So them having secret identities would not even make sense in the first place unless they were taking on human disguises. But the question would be, why would you even have a human disguise if the people who are attacking are aliens and you're another alien force trying to stop them?
Yeah. So...
And, as we get on the Power Rangers in space, the thing about the Power Rangers in the first 5 or 6 seasons is that they are all high school aged.
Yes.
So I think that also has something to do with it that, put yourself back in high school again, and if you were a Power Ranger, even if your villain knew who you were, it's problematic to let other people know that you're a Power Ranger.
Yes, if we're going to take Zordon's first rule into account, no using your powers for your own gain. So yeah, otherwise, I guess I don't see the point that would be problematic.
Exactly.
I would totally abuse it, though.
Now, when we get into Power Rangers in space, it's actually kind of interesting because, at least for the first half of the season, it definitely seems like they're still in high school. The Turbo teens are. So keeping their secret identities, I guess, makes sense to them in that regard.
Just because it's what their predecessors did. Exactly.
And really, they're carrying on from where they left off, which is also the brilliance of Power Rangers in space. But while they're in space, they don't need to hide their identities from other people and other worlds because Power Rangers throughout the galaxy are praised as heroes.
Yes. So, but we also have to consider that it's in Countdown Destruction, it's a big deal, the episode, at least how the episode presents it, that they get up there and morph in front of everyone.
Exactly. So the secret identity plays into the climax, definitely.
As for most of the series, it doesn't really come up.
Exactly. I mean, there are always going to be those things like, oh, I could get out of this situation if I morph, but they're going to find out that I'm a Power Ranger and all that, which to me is always a false conflict to me because it always depends on who it is, but it's usually the people.
It's an easy thing to recycle from season to season.
Yeah, I mean, the one that comes to mind is Cassie in Power Rangers in Space, where she's trapped in the building with the guy who has a crush on her and everything. Although, if Cassie was a vindictive woman and all that, she says, "Oh, I'm a Power Ranger, and you have to do this," or so I don't know. I'm just thinking if she was evil.
Well, going off of the idea in a less misogynistic direction,
sorry,
is that he could use that information against her.
And actually, that was another thing, too, because actually in that episode, what happened, she lost her diary where she has a picture of her as the Pink Ranger in it.
Now, was that picture, did that have her with her helmet off?
It did not show the picture in the episode, from what I recall.
Because if it's her with her helmet off, you could use that, but if it's just the Pink Ranger, then maybe. But then again,
but it was
corresponds with a diary entry.
Yeah, it was essential to the plot, basically, that the whole reason she had to get her diary back was not that, oh my god, I like Edward so much and nobody needs to know about it.
It's, that she talks about being a Power Ranger.
Exactly, and the guys are trying to exploit her in that episode. Primarily, he's trying to get his friend on a date with her because he likes her. So it's more of a Dawson's Creek kind of concept to it than really is anything Power Rangers that has to do with secret identities, I think.
Yeah.
But still. In any case, let's move on from Power Rangers in Space to the next season, Power Rangers Lost Galaxy.
Where we're really getting into the problematic...
And this bothers me a lot, because I cannot think of a single reason why the Galaxy Rangers would have secret identities. Now, here would be the thing. Like, I can understand maybe Leo having a secret identity, because he's the stowaway. But 10 episodes in, the fact that he's a stowaway is no longer a plot point.
Yes.
Because apparently there's no census control on Terra Venture.
Yeah, that could be problematic on year-long ventures.
Yeah, I mean, that was the big thing that I had for it. And of course, when Mike comes back after Redemption Day, that's, where were you this whole time? And of course, they just brush it under the rug when he could easily say, oh, I'm the Magna Defender. That's why that is.
Right, and maybe it was just a holdover from the previous
and it could be a holdover, but it would have to make logical sense. Because could you imagine...
No, I'm not saying it was logic. It was a logical decision. What I'm saying is it was tradition. They simply did it because that was the way it had been done before.
But also, the context in which it's done and the setting that we have are completely unique to any previous Power Ranger season,
right.
Even unique to Power Rangers in Space.
Exactly, because they're not dealing with Earth at all.
And the thing is, you also have to realize the fact that they should not be able to have secret identities. Because, one, the census abilities that they have. Two, I guarantee you that Terra Venture has a security camera at every corner, no matter where you go.
Exactly.
And three, Kendricks, Mike, and Kai all work for the GSA. And they have rigorous military-like schedules. And I don't know what most people think about the military, but there should be no way, if you're on like a Navy vessel, to leave your post and become a Power Ranger and not get court-martialed for it later. Because, so, even if they decide to have secret identities, they should not be able to have secret identities on Terra Venture.
Yeah, and so, plot hole. There you go.
Yeah, I mean, but Lost Galaxy is good enough to where it's not really thought about too much. But there are some issues where secret identities do come into play in the series. If I'm recalling correctly, there was the Red Romance where they did have Leo fall in love with Ginger, and like he had to save her but couldn't reveal he was a Power Ranger for what reason, I don't know. And of course, keep in mind, if it's a personal game thing, he doesn't have that rule.
Yeah, he's not bound by Zordon.
And he shouldn't have, and he should not have to be bound by Zordon's rules, particularly the identity one, because I think it would be in the benefit of Terra Venture to allow the identities.
You can't even say that it's tradition from previous Rangers, because the Turbo Ranger, well, the second Turbo Rangers / Space Rangers, they probably just kept with the secret identity thing because
it was a holdover for what they had done.
It's what their predecessors
when they were sworn in by Dimitri and Zordon to be new Rangers, they would have to abide by those rules.
Zordon's rules.
And of course, it probably doesn't cross their minds to abandon that because they're still trying to keep their Earthbound origins because they're now transitioning.
Because their personal lives haven't changed that much, despite the fact that the Ranger powers did.
Yeah, but eventually, once they go galaxy hopping, and it becomes more Star Trek than it is space cases.
And it's irrelevant when they're in space. But anyways, back to Lost Galaxy.
Yeah, so again, Lost Galaxy doesn't make any sense to me. Is there any practical reason you can think why they would have identities?
Not really. In fact, it would be more helpful for them to reveal their identities, at least to the GSA.
Yeah. And at least to the commander and all that, so.
Yeah.
Next up, Lightspeed Rescue. And this is the first season. Yeah.
The first season with no secret identities.
And it's not needed at all because the demons are such a force that, first of all, even if the demons knew who they were personally to begin with, it doesn't really matter because the way the demons operate, it's not like the way Zorda, the way Zed and Rita and all them
Rita and
operate.
Zed were more focused on ruining the Rangers' day.
But they're just talking about reclaiming basically the Holy Land is what the demons are doing.
They're interested in taking over the city.
Yeah, and also the Rangers are part of a military organization. So much like in the same way Steve Rogers was part of the U.S. military, his identity as Captain America was known.
Depends on the continuity. If we're talking about the Avengers, yes.
Okay,
the movies, yes.
Yes.
In the comics, they tried to pussyfoot a secret identity in that he would disappear from, I think he was like I forget what he was doing, but he would disappear and act as Captain America. But in the modern Marvel movie universe, no, it was never a factor.
But the idea is that a secret identity, if you're part of a government organization, is not needed unless it's a special covert operation, which Lightspeed Rescue was not.
They were very high profile.
And out in the public, too, because as Linkara has pointed out, and again, he makes awesome points, they're also part of the rescue aspect. So even when they're not functioning as Power Rangers, they are interacting with the public
and they
in
wear
capacity.
Their Lightspeed Rescue jackets.
Yep.
So that people will look at them and know that is someone who is here to help.
Exactly. So it's just like a standard uniform for police or anybody else, for that matter.
Exactly. So,
now,
nothing. It all makes sense. It all adds up.
Now, Time Force is an interesting case in Secret Identities because, first of all, you have the idea that they're from the future. Mm-hmm. That the Time Force Rangers want to keep a low profile because they don't want... Here's the thing. They don't want a society who knows that aliens from another dimension and demons and all this, that there's time travel. Because if you can't handle if you can handle aliens, you can't handle time travel, apparently.
Now, I'm thinking of that differently. I'm sure this never crossed the writer's mind, and this is me personally theorizing again. I believe that knowledge of the future is more dangerous than knowledge of the existence of aliens. Now, go with me here for a second.
Okay.
Say that let's just say the original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers team revealed their secrets.
Okay.
You might have some people wanting gain from the technology and powers.
Yeah.
Now, if we take the Time Force team, not only would people be interested in their powers and their technology, but also knowledge of the future. And when that knowledge of the future is sought, that could create irreparable damage to the future. Now, imagine, okay, let's just say someone is quizzing them. Say they're about knowledge of the stock market or mega corporations in the future. Mm-hmm. Let's say Google's still going in year 3000.
Oh, no.
And someone hears about that and they think, ooh, I'm going to invest in Google. And then all of a sudden, you have created someone in the future who is much more powerful. Let's Back to the Future 2. What happened when Biff...
Marty brought back the sports almanac. Older Biff got a hold of it.
And look what happened to the future, the present of Hill Valley.
Well, the biggest concern with Power Rangers Time Force is that the idea is that the future is always changing. The future is what we make of it. That's kind of like the moral lesson to take from it and everything. But also, we're not given clear definitions of what consequences happen from their actions.
Even though that seems to be the message of the series, consider it like this. Mm-hmm. If you're time traveling, if you give someone knowledge of the future, they can change the future, and then all of a sudden, the life you knew when you returned to your time period, gone.
But also, that's not what happens in Time Force. Nothing has really changed. because we're not told what damages they're making to the timeline to justify what they're doing.
Other than Wes's resurrection.
Yeah. Well, I mean, his death, and then... I mean, Alex was resurrected, but we still don't... We don't really have an idea of how or why that happened. That's a lot of that's speculation.
Yeah.
But you know... The whole idea of secret identities, I think, in Time Force is to keep a low profile because they don't want people to know that they are from the future.
And they're trying to prevent a future where Rancic rules.
But my thought would be, you can still have your identity known, but at no point do you have to say you're from the future. I mean, look at Katie, Lucas, Jen, and Trip can just say that they're Power Rangers without having to say that they're from the future. They could say they're aliens because Power Rangers is already established. Yeah, they can establish that, heck, we're from KO-35.
They can lie and say they're power of light speed.
Exactly. I mean, the whole idea of them having to go to the clock tower and take odd jobs. Here's the thing. That works for Wes's character as far as what he's trying to do with his father, but it doesn't mean anything in regards to what the rest of them are doing.
Right, and you bring up a good point that they could reveal that they're Power Rangers and not reveal that they're from the future. So you have a good point, and Pride's something that, again...
And of course, the only person whose identity was known was Eric, but again, as we say, he was part of the Silver Guardians, and I guarantee...
A high-profile organization.
And I guarantee you, as soon as he became the Quantum Ranger, the premium for that service went up.
Well, yeah, they have a Power Ranger on duty versus just a bunch of dudes with guns.
Exactly.
Okay, so now we're back to secret identities.
In Wild Force, which this is another series where it doesn't really make sense, because with the exception of Alyssa, all the Rangers are living off the grid. Okay, so Cole is living, he was living in the wild, he's living in the Animarium.
He has no identity to keep secret.
Danny, Max, they're all living up there, hiding, because, I think when Danny sees Kendall again, she's like, oh, I haven't seen you in forever, or something like that. Taylor's odd because they think she's dead.
Her identity makes sense. For some reason, she's okay with everyone thinking she's dead. So therefore, it's best for people to only see her as the Yellow Ranger instead of, oh my God, this missing person.
Well, I don't get that because
was it ever established why?
Well, in her backstory, she was flying for the Air Force. And she discovered the Animarium, and because of the magnetic fields or whatever, she crashed.
Assumed lost.
She crashed onto the Animarium. That's how she met Shayla.
You know what? That makes sense that she's keeping herself secret then. Court-martial, baby.
Well, here would be my thought. If she's trying to keep the secret of the Animarium from people finding out about it, which I could believe Shayla doesn't want 50,000 people coming out there.
Yeah, 50 doesn't want a whole bunch of people coming out there, and Taylor could face serious consequences
for flying to the
wall.
Well, yeah, but now she returns at the end of the series with no consequences.
Okay, yeah, you're right.
So, I mean, the only thing I can think of is that she found the Animarium and wanted to keep it a secret, but there's no reason because the jet never crashed into the Animarium, so it could be salvageable from wherever it was as she crashed. She could have come up with some sort of story. There may have been, questions like, well, there's a hole in your story, we don't believe you, and blah, blah, blah. But I think part of it may also have to do with what I brought up about Lost Galaxy, is that if you work for a military organization and you run off to be a Power Ranger...
You face consequences.
And that would be the only reasonable thing I could think of, but...
I think the most reasonable thing is to keep the Animarium a secret.
And again, I don't know why you would keep it a secret, particularly since people know that it exists. And by what I mean is, because the whole backstory with Cole's father and Dr. Adler is that they were looking for the Animarium.
But they were looking for it, but never found it.
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't know what the mythology of the Animarium is supposed to be, but they had a pretty detailed map of what the Animarium would look like before Cole's father went on the expedition.
Didn't find it. You have to consider, they had information that was completely true, but nobody believed them. So,
well, it's not that nobody believed them. They had a pretty decent press conference where people did believe them, but then they went missing.
Right.
So whether they believed
never
them or
came
not.
up with anything. So,
But in any case, it just seems odd to me that if you're living out of the eye of society, I mean, because now Alyssa, she's in school, she's a college student like us, so I can understand her doing it. Although I'd like to know how she gets in her classes and being a Power Ranger at the same time, because I don't even think I could do that.
I suppose if you teleport, I don't know.
Well, they don't have teleportation in Wild Force. Unless there's like some sort of rainbow bridge they take to get to Animarium, which is still a plot hole because we don't know how they ever got from the Animarium.
Teleport off screen. I don't know.
Something. Now, the next one, we go into the Disney area. We got Ninja Storm. I'm less concerned about this one because...
it makes sense.
You go to secret ninja school. I would also imagine that being a Power Ranger is a secret as well.
Yeah, and, that way people... because if, again, you'd be asked about what your powers are, and you could...
the question is, why do you have ninja schools in the first place, and why are they secret? And, of course, it's the whole question, how do you get into a ninja school and stuff like that?
You know a guy who knows a guy who knows a guy who knows a ninja.
Yeah, I suppose. But I'm less concerned with that. I just, the whole thing is, it's secret ninja school, so they have to have the identities,
I'm okay with the concept of a secret ninja school. Because ninja schools in Japan, historically, were pretty secretive. Because they were producing, now granted this isn't the case for Power Rangers, but they were producing assassins, and they wanted to keep their operations secret.
Yeah, and I don't know what a modern-day ninja
It may have been tradition.
Yeah, it could be any number of things in there, but again, it's least problematic. It's not
secret the big... Ninja Academy, so secret identities, it works.
Now, the next few seasons, nothing really big. I mean, Dial Thunder, they're back in high school, so it's not...
the same reasons back as in my Morphin.
Yeah, so, and again, Mesogog knew Tommy, but I don't think he really knew the identities. He knew Kira, because he met Kira. Yeah, I think he did know the identities, but Mesogog, even though he's far more competent than Rita, didn't do anything with that, except when he was messing with Tommy and Trent, but those were personal connections that he had. He made that more of a personal vendetta.
It's just like the demons, they're more concerned. He was more concerned with accomplishing his master plan than he was with ruining the Rangers' day.
Yeah.
As Linkara so brilliantly put it.
SPD, I don't think we need to talk anything about that.
Lightspeed, they're part of a high-profile organization. Yeah. They walk around with their uniforms. They're not hiding anything.
Yeah, they're the cops. Oh no, 5-0, 5-0.
Okay.
Now, Mystic Force is one that also confuses me a bit because this is the time it's really played up for hijinks and also for plot points within the series. Because, of course, as you know, they all work for Toby. I don't know why you need 5 employees working in one music store at any given time, but that's just how it is.
It's plot convenience.
But they would leave, and because they leave so much, Toby would get upset, and he hired Lily, and eventually he had to hire Phineas. So that was actually important because Lily started, being around the Rangers more and became, to them, a viable threat because, oh my god, she's in our midst, basically. Yeah. But I don't know why the Mystic Force Rangers really needed secret identities.
They didn't, and it's not like they were trying to hide magic either.
And again...
because they were using magic when they fought monsters.
And Korag knew who they were, Mordecon, Imperius, all of them knew who these guys were. Mm-hmm. So it's another one of those confusing things where secret identity is not really necessary unless to keep the public at bay. But again, with what was going on with Toby, it just seems like that would be something... they eventually told him, but I think he found out on his own, and then they had to tell him.
Right, and maybe it's just they had the idea for the secret identity plot. They probably wanted to use it for some laughs, and
the thing is, we don't actually see them as civilians that much in the series because most of the time we see them they're training, learning new spells, or in battle.
They're in ranger duties, basically.
Yeah, and again, the only time we do see them a lot of civilian time is in the record store.
And I don't know. Maybe that was just there to keep them grounded in reality.
Yeah. Operation Overdrive is a curious one because they're not part of a high-profile organization. It's a lot like Batman Inc. When you think about it. It's really just this insane private billionaire industrialist who is on a treasure hunt, and he has hired
these people.
Basically his own bodyguards or a personal army to do his dirty work in a way. Even though he was...
I never thought of it like that. Damn.
Well, I mean, now let's be honest. He was going to be the Red Ranger, and then Mac got involved, and Mac became the Red Ranger, and I'm sure he had plans of being the Mercury Ranger at some point. But yeah. So when you have all that money, and you get the most high-profile people in the world, because you got the smartest person in the world, one of the best IndyCar racers, I think is what she was, IndyCar racer, one of the best... I don't even know what Will was. I think he was supposed to be like a thief for hire, soldier of fortune.
Yeah, he was a thief for hire, and I guess that's good for adventures and stuff.
Yeah, and then the greatest stuntman in the world, which was Dax, and I don't understand that either. But whatever his choices were and all that, secret identities were not necessary for them to carry out their work, particularly
and they were
because
traveling around the world so much. It's not like they had a community to keep themselves from.
And you know what's actually interesting? I just want to bring up this interesting point. When Once a Ranger, when Rose loses her powers, she goes back to teaching. Could you imagine having a semester where your professor is a Power Ranger? Wouldn't you be in office hours like all the time?
Yeah. Yeah, there you go. There's a good reason to keep a secret identity.
Especially for professors. They don't like their office hours.
You annoy the piss out of by some kids. Okay, so...
Jungle Fury, another secret organization-ish.
Yeah, Kung Fu School.
I don't necessarily know, again, why they need to keep their secret identities, because Daishi or Jared or whoever's in charge knows. And I would assume... that I don't think they know that they're at the pizza place. That's why it's never directly attacked in the series. Is because, remember, they didn't know who RJ was.
Right, so he was keeping a low profile.
Yeah, so, maybe that does make a little bit of sense when you think about it, because, again, he doesn't know where they're going. But actually, there is... You know what? I do remember Casey was delivering a pizza once from Jungle Karma, and he was attacked by a monster, and I think it was...
And was there a point made to keep his identity secret?
No, I think it was like I think it was like a fake call.
The monster knew who to attack?
I think so. I'm trying to remember exactly how that episode went. I forget the name of it, but it's just in my mind. He goes to deliver a pizza and then gets attacked by a monster. And then you would just draw from that conclusion, well, he works for this pizza place. Maybe we can track him down. But, of course, the villains are not sophisticated villains. They're more old school kind of, The thing about the Geiki Ranger villains and, conversely, their Jungle Fury counterparts is that they're very low tech. It's more of a mysticism kind of feel to it. So maybe it didn't.
Mystic season.
Yeah, it probably just didn't factor into their thinking in that regard.
Yeah, so sounds like secret identity wasn't really an issue.
Yeah, I don't think it was either. Oh, now you can talk about this season because I've talked everything about this season.
Okay. So, RPM, once again, we're back to Rangers with no secret identities.
Yeah, because when you're the last people on Earth, I don't think keeping your identity is very important.
Yeah, and just like the SPD and Lightspeed Rescue Rangers, they walk around with their uniforms, that being their coats.
Not that they're really uniforms, but...
Still, they're somewhat uniform. But
very lax dress code for a military
well, it's not a military organization. They're Dr. K, despite the fact she works with the military often, but she's also...
But it's not like she was a splinter group or an independent research...
No, she is independent. She does... Her lab is not located...
Well, I understand, but she's still funded by the government facilities and the military of Corinth, right? Corinth. I can't even pronounce English words right. But yeah, I mean, they all work together. They're not separate organizations.
Right, and really I didn't even think about funding, because I just assumed there wasn't money in Corinth.
Well, no, there is money.
Oh,
There has
Bob is messing with things.
Yeah, which that should definitely be your priority. People working for money in the ends of the world.
I like to think of Dr. K as an independent contractor, but the Rangers were still presented as a public service.
Mm-hmm.
See, that's the big difference between the secret identity seasons and the non-secret identity seasons.
Yeah, there definitely seems to be a pattern that we're bringing up. And let's just briefly talk about, but we'll bring this together as a whole, talk about it in general. But let's go into the last 2 seasons, Samurai and Megaforce. And I'm not counting Samurai and Super Samurai as 2 separate. They're 1 season. Let's be honest about that.
And let's just look at...
let's just jump ahead. Megaforce, they're in high school. Makes sense. It's not that big a deal. Plus
they're harkening back to the original season.
And Creepox is the only one who knows of Troy being a ranger. They don't know the identity of the other rangers as far as I can tell. But again, I've only seen the first few episodes. I got to catch up on my vlogs. But secret identities in high school, I think if you're in high school, it makes sense. I don't see that as a problem. But the Samurai, I'm also not sure why they have to have secret identities. Because consider this. Much like the Shinkangers, this is a generational thing that's passed down from father to son, mother to daughter, and so forth.
Right. However, despite the fact this is a generational thing, it seems to me that since there has been, for the last few years, relative peace, that they've not been a high-profile lineage of people.
See, that's what I'm trying to figure out, is that if they're just there to train for when one specific faction comes, then I don't understand the point of it being a secret to anybody that, oh, you see that, kids? If something ever happens, those will be the people they'll defend us as the Samurai Rangers. The only thing I can imagine, and just go with me on this idea, is that when things like Countdown to Destruction happens, when things like the Abyss breaks open and all these attacks start happening, and the Samurai Rangers do nothing because, we're just waiting for Xandrid to come back and everything, that people would go like, how dare you not help us and stuff.
You might get an angry mob outside of Master G's house.
Yeah, that's the only conceivable thing I can think of why they would need secret identities. Heck, when Bulk and Skull come to... Bulk and Spike... See that's how bad it is that I keep calling him Skull when he's actually Spike. Because it's the same damn character. When they come to the Shiba house, they have to keep their identity secret from the Power Rangers. Why? I don't understand that.
I think the writers are just going with tradition because, face it, we've had more secret identity seasons than we've had non-secret identity seasons.
Yeah, and let's tie this all back together. Let's bring this back around.
Yes.
The secret identities, I think, in general for Power Rangers, will only work and should only work in highly social settings, high school and college.
Okay.
Because it just adds to too much drama and problems, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But for military organizations, it should never be an issue.
And really, aside from Lost Galaxy, it's not. It hasn't been in any of the other ones that have the public service Rangers.
And I wonder, Raptor, is secret identities, in the context of Power Rangers, a good idea overall? Is it really important when 90% of the villains know the identities of the Power Rangers? Is it really important for them to even keep it?
I would say generally doesn't matter. It occasionally makes for a fun episode when they're trying to hide a secret identity.
Mm-hmm.
Makes a fun plot now and then, but otherwise it's largely unnecessary. Again, I think secret identities were used during the first season of Mighty Morphin because it was superhero tradition, especially for American superheroes, to hold secret identities. Because when you look at Sentai, secret identities are not as much of a thing.
They are in some seasons, but not in all because it's just not that big a deal.
The Z Rangers weren't hiding their identities.
Yeah, Geiki Rangers were not. Shinkangers were not. Gokaijers
Everyone knew who the Gokaijers were.
The Gosagers, like they were just hiding the fact they were angels. That was like the only thing they were hiding, but it wasn't like, oh, the area is the.
And the Go Busters are public service rangers.
And Kyoryuger, which I find is hilarious about Kyoryuger, is that for the first episode, they're like, well, we should know who each other is, so we're going to keep our identity secret for 10 minutes, and then that's the end of it. Then they know.
And it's not an issue at all in later episodes.
Well, it is to other people. Like, for some reason, Blue Ranger's trying to keep his identity from his sister, but she knows it almost immediately. Like, oh, you're not fooling me, you know?
And so it's probably just joking on that concept.
I just think overall, unless you can have a good story reason, because again, let's be honest, Batman is a great reason to have a secret identity.
Yes.
Multi-billionaire, you could sue Batman if you find out who his identity is, and all this kind of stuff. But for Power Rangers, well, actually not Power Rangers, for superheroes in general, I don't like secret identities because they just add another thing you have to deal with as a writer, as a creator, like, okay, now we gotta see how they get out of this situation with their identities and stuff. Because that was the thing about the Ninja Turtles. Like, they didn't have secret identities because they didn't need any. And you never had to deal with that. All you ever deal was if they had to go undercover. And that was before people knew about the Turtles. But once they knew about the Turtles, it's not like they have to hide themselves.
Yeah, and I guess I would agree with you there. There are times when secret identities are great, but that's because there's a great story reason. The perfect example is Spider-Man Peter Parker. He is constantly dealing with the conflict between his two lives, his life as a person and his life as a superhero.
And of course, his biggest issue,
story reason.
Yeah, and of course, all his villains have a personal connection to him in some form or another. The Green Goblin, Venom,
and also he learned what happens when a villain finds out his identity. When the Green Goblin killed Gwen Stacy.
Yes, or in the movies, for people that may be more familiar with that, when he finds out he's Peter Parker and he threatens Mary Jane. And then Aunt May, and then all that stuff. Because, well, I guess the thing is you go for their heart, which is something that...
The heart, Osborn! We go for his heart!
That's something the Power Rangers really haven't had to deal with. And I will say this. If Power Rangers can come up with a season, after Super Megaforce, obviously, that deals with secret identities, and then the consequences of a villain finding out who they are, that I would definitely want to go ahead and watch. I want them to explore that, because I cannot think of an instance off the top of my head where there are consequences relevant to what Osborn did in the Spider-Man movies. I mean, yes, you have the kidnapping of the parents, but she was kidnapping tons of citizens. So
yeah. So, yeah, I agree. I think that sounds like a great idea if that was approached in story.
Well, Raptor, I think we've talked about just about all there is to talk about secret identities.
Yeah, in Power Rangers at least.
So
probably go on for several hours about Spider-Man and secret identities.
Absolutely. So, in any case, we want to thank you guys for listening. As always, leave us your thoughts. What do you think of secret identities, either in superheroes in general, and Power Rangers and Super Sentai, and just let us know. Otherwise, Raptor, again, thanks for joining.
Always good to be here.
You guys have a good evening, and the tavern is now closed.